Bombshell Brunches, where your hosts Raquel Rudenberg and Christina Lau sip and spill with badass babes every Tuesday morning.
Okay, we just did our 11:11 wish, which whatever time zone you're in, let's just pretend it's 11:11. I am so excited to introduce you to Ocean because of so many reasons, which you're gonna find out over the course of the next 45 or so minutes. Welcome, Bombshell Brunches audience, and welcome to Ocean. Hi, Raquel, who obviously is always here, who's always here. I don't even know how to begin describing the magic that is Ocean. Ocean, if we want to talk about it on the surface level, is an internationally renowned bodywork therapist, a wellness coach, and a retreat leader with over 25 years experience as a fitness world champion, celebrity personal trainer. Can we say David Beckham and the Beckhams and Kate Moss? I mean, as well as me, because, I'm today's celebrity. And a certified yoga teacher, including extensive studies in Southeast Asia. Ocean's pioneering approach, which I can personally attest to, combines fitness modalities with the ancient elements of yoga, Chinese, and Thai medicine to facilitate the return to health, not just physically, but in the mind and the spirit as well. I don't even know how to put into words because, and this is what we're going to go into, sometimes there aren't words and sometimes your body just has to speak. And Ocean got me out of a funk that I was in ways that I just couldn't even imagine, that I couldn't put into words. And now all of you know me pretty well by now. If you've listened to these podcasts, both Raquel and I are very cognitive people. And Ocean has the most incredible way of speaking and communicating with the human body and the human soul that I have never experienced before in my life. So I firstly just want to say thank you for saving my best version of myself, Ocean. And secondly, welcome.
Thank you. So grateful to be here.
So
that was a beautiful introduction.
I would have spoken for so much longer, but we know that it's not all about me today. But what I want to do is take people on a bit of a journey because there is so much to what you do. And I want you to describe first, if you will, where you came from, because your personal history is endlessly fascinating. How did you get into this hybridized, individualized, customized, East meets West, soul meets mind, meets body, meets heart? How did you get into it? Where are you from? Who are you?
Well, I'm from here. I'm from Vancouver. And, this is the last place I thought I would be right now because of the whole pandemic thing. But I was born and raised here. And when I was younger, my dream was to be a superhero. I did work in film like 10 years ago when I lived in Vancouver. And I got heavily into competing. And I did really well with that. And then I was teaching fitness classes. I got into yoga, and it was during my time teaching yoga that I found people were getting really emotional in the classes. And and then I got introduced to Thai yoga massage, and I thought that was a modality that would definitely help clients that were really stiff, right? Getting them into the positions without having to have a yoga background. And then I had the same experience with that people, when I would work on them, would get really emotional. And I think it was 2010 also. I'm going to skip a lot of stuff to get right to the meat and the heart of what got me into the treatment and the work. And in 2010, I had a girlfriend who looked just like me, blonde hair, blue eyes. We looked like sisters. And we were actually working on a show called Supernatural together. I don't know if are they still doing that show?
It just ended, I think. Just ended.
Yeah. So back then I was doing a lot of special skill stuff with guns, weapons, and whatnot. And this girlfriend of mine, Jocelyn, she was just her dream was to be a stunt woman. And, you know, she wanted to get lit on fire. She was an amazing rollerblader, and like, that was her passion. That year, 2010, and it's interesting now that we're in February as well, this will come full circle. She was diagnosed with lung cancer and 2 brain tumors. And she invited me over to her house, and she said, Ocean, you know, I'm experiencing all these crazy things. And she said it really matter-of-factly. She said, the left side of my body has just started to shut down. She's like, I can't barely lift up my arm. I can't go to the bathroom properly on my own. It's so crazy. And yeah, I've never experienced somebody with cancer before. So that was really intense. And she said, if you only had 2 years to live, what would you do? And I really, in that moment, looked at my life and I was like, okay, I'm doing really well in fitness and as an athlete, and that's all about the body, right? Like my whole life at that point was, and you know, go back to that. I was in magazines, I was doing these fitness competitions, I was on TSN, ESPN. Everything was competitive and about the body. And when she looked at me and she said, you know, if you only had 2 years to live, what would you do? I thought, oh my God, you know, I would travel the world. I would go to places where the emphasis wasn't on how you look, but more how you feel, into countries that had a spiritual heart and soul. And I said to her, I would go to Thailand, I would go to India, I would go to Cambodia, these beautiful places, temples and beaches. And her eyes lit up when I said Thailand. And she said, oh, you know, can we go there? I want to go there. And that moment, just in looking at her, because she looked so much like me, we were only a few years apart. And I just thought, this could be me. Like, what if, and it's not theoretical. We weren't having a glass of wine thinking like, okay, like imagine if you only had 2 years, what would you do? Like, this was real. She only had 2 years if she was lucky, right? And I said, yeah, let's do it. And the big piece for me there as well was, I mentioned she had 2 brain tumors, right? So she had to have brain surgery. And I called her 2 days before her brain surgery. And I asked her, like, how are you feeling? And I was expecting the worst, that she was going to be anxiety, overwhelmed, freaking out. And she said, Ocean, I went for EFT, emotional freedom tapping. Are you aware of what that is?
I am.
No. Okay.
I'm not.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it's literally where you tap on different meridian points around the body and you state whatever you're feeling, right? So in her case, she was going in for a life-threatening surgery. And when I spoke to her, she said, I went for 3 EFT sessions and I'm so excited about this surgery. I have no fear around it. In fact, I'm looking forward to it because I know that, you know, something amazing could come from it. And I thought, what kind of therapy would take someone from like the state she was in to saying, oh, I have no fear whatsoever, this is a great thing. So that was my first introduction to it, that I'd heard of EFT, this emotional freedom tapping. I thought, wow, that's amazing. And then the experience itself of witnessing her and having that relationship with her just sort of made me fearless. I thought, you know what, like, I'm not really happy in this reality that I'm in. Everything is external and I just want to go to Asia. And I took the like biggest leap of faith. I knew I'd never been to Europe or Asia or like traveled overseas like that. And I didn't know anyone there. And I was literally like, I'm going to take every dollar I have in the bank and I'm just going to go because I'm not happy in this paradigm. And I say the date was very profound because now today's the 1st, right? I left, I packed up all my stuff, put it in storage. I quit all my jobs and I just like bought a ticket for a year to go to Asia, right? I'm like, I'm out. And I basically told her, I'm like, I'm going to go over there. We'll get everything set up and then you can come over, knowing full well that she was terminally ill. And I wanted to keep the dream alive, regardless of whether she was going to be able to make it. And the reality is that she she got really, really sick. And so I arrived there at the end of November 2010, and Jocelyn passed away on the 14th. I forget, it made me emotional, but on the 14th, she passed away on Valentine's Day, which is coming up. And you know, it's sad, but it's also, she's the greatest thing that ever happened to me. She was my greatest lesson. Had I not had that experience, you know, I wouldn't have gone to Asia and then wanted to study all of these modalities. And so, yeah, I traveled for the next 10 years studying healing modalities and understanding where we hold sickness in the body, where we hold trauma in the body. And it just kind of went on from there, like amazing, profound experiences. But to go back, you know, I was an athlete, then I was a yoga teacher, then I was doing massage therapy, and then I had this experience, and it just propelled me to go really deep into understanding what's underneath the skin. I call it the human skin suit, and to understand what we're carrying in there. Yeah, it's kind of nasty, right?
I call people meat bags, and every time I do, people
That's worse.
like I'm a monster, and I'm like,
I heard you say.
You heard me say that the other day, didn't you? It's like, wow, just a bunch
Well,
of
the vegans might be offended. Yeah.
Well, no vegans that I know eat humans anyway. Like no humans are going to eat humans. No, there's nothing to be offended. We're bags of meat.
Bones and yeah, and hopefully a little bit of spirit and soul in there too. Yeah.
That's what apparently. This is why I need to keep Ocean in my life, so that I just don't remain meat bag. I don't want to stay a meat bag.
No, there's so much more to you.
Oh wow. Well, okay. I mean, that's.
So did that answer your question?
Yes. I mean, so profoundly, just the honoring life, and I'm so impressed that you went there, not just for yourself, but for the human spirit. You know, for Jocelyn, you went and you prepared, you know, whatever the outcome was. And I think, you know, that instinct, that guide, that inner kind of navigation that took you there served you and then so many people as a result of what you do and how you know how to do it so well. So, you know, I mean, thank you, Jocelyn, for existing, for Ocean to be able to do what Ocean does. That's just incredible. So you had your own version of I suppose an eat, pray, love moment.
Totally.
Which I haven't seen yet, so I have
Really?
no idea
What?
No, because okay, there's a reason. I am not willing to watch this movie that tanked. I have to read the book.
The book is fabulous. You should.
I know. I have to read the book so that then I can be like, well, when that movie comes up and it's, you know, not great, which apparently wasn't great, I don't have to like avert my eyes. I just have to read it. It's just on my list of things to read. But you had your own version, and I've read other books.
Very much so. Yeah.
By Elizabeth Gilbert. So can you talk about what it was like more specifically to leave, you know, and to take care of yourself and learn in such a deep way, because you are a lifelong learner like myself and like Raquel. What were your top takeaways from packing up? I love that, from just picking up and packing up and embracing this entirely new culture, having never been to a non-English speaking country.
Oh, it was so good, so refreshing. Again, my whole world here, and you can relate if you're in acting and performing and stuff, you that human skin suit, you have to step into a role. It's competitive, it can be cutthroat, and I really was seeking connection. And after being a competitive athlete, I started competing when I was 19 and competed for 14 years.
In what?
And in fitness. Yeah, in fitness. Okay. I did a bodybuilding competition when I was 19, and then and I ended up on the cover of Flex magazine. Actually, you'll die if you see my pictures from then. Like I was jacked up at 19, and then I came back a year later and I did fitness and I won that, and I did really well with that. So I continued on, and that's how I was doing these ESPN shows, and I loved it. I would dress up like superheroes, and I was in a dance company when I was younger. So, I'd do a 2-minute routine, jumping around and flipping, and I was in amazing shape. But again, it's not a community sport. I love it. I love the sport, but you're training for yourself, right? So it's you against everyone else. And there's a lot of separation in that. And for me, it was like at the heart of it, I'm not actually a competitive person. I'm not trying to be better than anyone else or the best at something. It was like, I just love to perform. I loved making the costumes and the music and even in, you want to say something?
Sorry, no, please carry on. I have a thought.
Yeah. So for me, when I actually even look at why I was so drawn to the fitness and competing, it's that movement for me was a form of therapy. And luckily I was in dance when I was young, and I had a lot of struggles growing up. And to be honest, I thank God that I found movement. Otherwise I probably would have been a drug addict, because I needed a way to process emotion and frustration and confusion. And I did that through dance and movement. And so I feel that I channeled all of my emotional rage into a competitive sport, which really served me. I did well at it, and I used that anger as a driving force. But then there came a point where I was like, oh, okay, I'm doing well in this, but I feel separated from other people. It's not a team sport where you show up and you're playing together as a team, and that's something I really desires. And so yeah, it came full circle later, when I got to Asia.
I want to jump in on that because actually, Raquel, you were a dancer as well, weren't you? Were you?
No, not growing up, but I was in a lot of sports, and it was actually funny because as you were talking about growing up being in fitness, that was going to be a question that I brought up, because I think a lot of times when things are difficult and you're young, fitness and sports can be such a healthy way to channel that energy.
100%.
That's kind of where you were going, Christina.
Yeah. Well, actually, I wanted to also highlight that because Ocean and I have spoken about this before, and Raquel and I have spoken about this before. We're all very highly ambitious people, very driven. I played a lot of solo competitive sports. So I was, regional, national level for swimming, for tennis, for figure skating, that were all very individual. Now, I like being alone. I like doing the alone thing. However, what I found, and this is things that Ocean and I have uncovered since working together, since Ocean's been helping me through a bunch of things, I think that having that individualized sport focus can cause a disconnect between your body and your mind and your guts and your instincts and your soul. And we spoke about that the other day. Ocean and I were having a conversation about how sometimes if you really want to run at something and you're super focused, you can study and get ready for those exams and not get sick and disallow your body from getting sick. And then as soon as you finish those exams, you crumple into a heap. But your brain is basically able to focus and is so well trained to just block off what your physical body is doing, and vice versa, potentially, right? But often it's mind over the physicality. And I think that's a really important thing to highlight, that it's that you've discovered this beautiful two-way street, that it's not a new discovery, but the way you communicate that through your therapy is very interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
So that leads me to the concept and the question surrounding which ancient forms of self-care drew you in, because you went through, you discovered that you wanted to be part of a more collective mindset in various ways. What drew you into that? Like, did you just stumble upon the Thai yoga and the yoga and the
so I found a teacher here actually, I think it was 2008 that I had studied Thai massage with. And he would tell me all these tales about Thailand. He'd been going there for 20 years. And I thought, I don't want to put on my resume that I studied Thai massage in Vancouver. I want to say that I studied in Thailand. I want to go to the heart of it, you know? And I loved the Buddha statues that he had in the room and the Thai clothes and just even the vibe that he was transmitting through the teachings. I was like, this is amazing. Like, who are these people, you know, that they understood with Thai massage energy lines, and they would use Thai massage as a healing modality, you know, in ancient times before they even understood anatomy. It's like if there's energy blocked in the body, it will get sick and break down. And you know, unlike our more Western traditional massage, where like maybe you go in for an hour and they rub your back, Thai massage, it wouldn't normally even have a time frame on it. It's like you deal with the body as they come in and you follow the energy lines from the feet all the way up and you work wherever there is a blockage. And I just thought, this is amazing. This makes sense to me. So I went to a school in Chiang Mai up in the north of Thailand to study something called touching the emotional body, because I already had the foundation in Thai massage. And this was so fascinating to me. And I had my own breakthrough. It was kind of embarrassing in the middle of my training. So I'm there as a trainee to learn this technique. And you know, the concept of emotional release massage is just like a baby when it's crying. You instinctively, you know, you pick it up and you do these movements, and the nervous system of the child says, oh, okay, I can relax now, right? All kinds of things. And we would do that naturally, you know, if we were to pick up a child. And so even as adults, these movements are very calming to the nervous system. So here I am in my class studying this stuff, and it's like sometimes just the gentlest thing, you know, just picking up the feet, rocking the body, or, you know, just doing this. Like, anyways, I'm in the middle of the class, and the instructor like put me purposely into this very vulnerable position where my heart was completely exposed. I was like over his knee, and then all the other students are watching, and he, as a, you know, trained practitioner, was doing his due diligence by saying to me, do you feel safe? Right? Basically, like, can I continue to touch you? Are you okay in this pose? And it was so profound because in that moment, that word, it triggered me, and I burst into tears in front of the whole class. And I'm like, you know, like just felt like this. And I was hysterical. And all the other students got freaked out and they're like, oh my God, what's going on? Right. And I realized for me in that moment, he said, do you feel safe? And I had no reference for what safe meant. Like what is safe? No, I don't feel safe. And it triggered all this stuff for me. And it was amazing. It was so profound. So that, yeah, that scared everyone in the class, but it made me then even want to go deeper. Like, okay, here's these positions that you put the body into, and it just, boom, in a moment can release so much trauma, energy stuff, you know? And then, so once I was already in the north of Thailand, and I just continued to go another layer, like meditation. And then I found myself in southern Thailand, and they had TRE, trauma release exercises, which were more along the lines of putting the body into position where you hold a, say, like a kind of like a yoga posture for an extended period of time until the body starts to shake. And we need to shake. It's normal for humans to shake when there's trauma. But, you know, we've been socialized not to discharge our trauma. When we go into shock, we're like, oh, I need to shut this down. It looks funny or weird. And so we've internalized all the stuff that's happened to us in our life. So, you know, I then studied this trauma release exercises, and then got into breath work and studied transformational breathing, and have seen and understood the power of the breath, because it's what's bringing energy, life force into the body. For me personally, after, you know, so there was many meditation, EFT, TRE, NLP, right? The framework of how we're viewing things. I saw value in all of these individual treatments. And then I also saw the danger in some of these therapies being done in a group environment. They're helping people with PTSD, but if you have 25 people in a room and they're doing intense breath work and you don't have a facilitator to physically hold them and rock them or be there for them, that can be traumatizing in itself. So yeah.
And I want to jump in on that because there's a piece of your history that I think is really important here. When you were in Thailand, tell us about the mixed martial art, how you got into being that person, and then how that led you to understand more about and be surrounded by people who were suffering such incredible post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
Time for that story.
Okay. So, well, I ended up at Tiger Muay Thai in Phuket, which is one of the largest mixed martial arts camps in Asia. And that was totally by fluke because I was on my way to India and a friend of mine saw a post of mine. Actually, his name's Roger Huerta. He was a UFC fighter. And he saw that I was on Krabi Island and he wrote me a message. He said, Ocean, you're really close to Phuket. Why don't you come over and visit? I'm at this mixed martial arts camp. So I said, oh, that's perfect. I've got a few days before I go to India. I'd love to come over. I hopped on a boat and I had just been in a meditation for 2 weeks in the middle of the jungle with no internet, no electricity, right? Like totally out there. And then I show up in Phuket and I go to this fight camp and it was crazy. It's outside, like jungle, people fighting, punching each other in the face, working out. But it was such a contrast to the like meditative state I'd been in. I was like, this is awesome. I needed that fire, right? Like I was like, enough meditation. Like
I thought you were gonna say the opposite.
Yeah, I would just be
What?
running. I'd be like, I don't like these meat bags. These aren't my meat bags. I'm going somewhere else.
Do you know, I think that's the funny thing about me. I'm like an iron yogi. I grew up, training, lifting heavy. So no, it was a contrast and I really was needing that fire. And so luckily my friend said, come out for lunch with the manager and a few friends. And they were needing a fitness instructor because the American instructor they had at that time had just given notice. So my friend volunteered me. Said, oh, Ocean can teach for you. I said, I can't teach for you. I'm here for 4 days. I'm going to India for a month, right? So they really were needing someone. They said, listen, this guy gave a month's notice. Can you come back in a month? And we'll take care of everything. Just like we need someone to teach. You can do whatever you want, free run, So I thought, what the hell? Like I really like this. This is a good contrast and it's fun. So I came back and I mean, my life changed after that because I got thrown into this camp. They had jujitsu, Krabi Kabong, Western boxing, yoga. It's like every martial art you could imagine. Things I don't even know the name of. And there was people coming from all over the world to train at this camp, professional UFC fighters, but then also guys coming straight out of Afghanistan, from the military, from being, out on, what do you call it, their tours, like in the middle of the trenches, right? And then there was people coming just for holiday. So they asked me to teach yoga and it was just bizarre because I was I was the only female instructor at the time. And I had the naive conception that if you were white, you spoke English. And so that was a big lesson for me too. Yeah, I know it's really naive, but like I would sometimes have, 40, 50 people in the class and they would like be looking at me funny. And I'm like, what's going on? And then I thought, okay, ask everyone their name and where they're from. And as I went around and asked, it was like some people spoke no English at all. They would just like say China, like, so I was like really tested in that way to then teach to people that could only receive from my movement and how present I was. And it was in this environment, that guys were coming over and they were joining the yoga class in the morning. And these are guys that I mean, to be honest, I'm sure half, not half, but a majority of people were also in prison before. And like this was not a um, specific market of people that were coming on as like a fitness vacation. Like this was just everything, and you would have professional athletes. People would show up that were 100 pounds overweight and never exercised, but they were flying to Asia because they knew that I need to change something drastic in my life. And yeah, so that was my learning ground. And because I was challenged to um, teach people that didn't speak English and had all these issues, I saw how all of these healing modalities I learned could really help these people um, who couldn't verbally communicate, that everything is about presence and a feeling and what's happening right now in this moment. Yeah.
And how did that work? How did people receive well? Did you just show them through your movement?
Yeah, it was crazy. So um, again, so what happened, it wasn't just like this vacation place where people come, you take them through a program. People are showing up from all over the place with all kinds of different issues, anywhere from like they just lost a partner, someone died, their parent died, or they lost a fiance. Um, to someone's an alcoholic, suicidal, drug addicts, I mean, everything. But the commonality is that everyone believes and feels, and there's truth to it. If I get my body healthy, then I'll be healthy. So people were showing up there for this. And then also these guys were showing up after their tours of duty or whatever, and they're coming into the yoga class. And I'm there naively saying, just like relax, take a deep breath, close your eyes, look inside. And I would have these guys like completely break down and come up to me after and say, Ocean, I feel really uncomfortable. I'm 6'4", I'm 250 pounds, like I'm a killer. And you told me to take a deep breath and look inside. And that shattered me. I just fell apart. And I'll be honest, I had people tell me, like, I don't want to look inside because I've killed over 300 people in war and that haunts me, And I was like, wow, okay, yeah, I get that. So, um, I believe in the way that I was speaking to people as they would show up. I say, yeah, this is a fitness class, but what we're really doing is we're moving whatever's happened to us in life through our movement. And the beauty of that space at that time, I said, this isn't like the outer world. We right now have this ability to create an environment and a community and a support system. So I invite you to show up, where you are with whatever you have right now. And people started coming to me, and I did the work with them. I said, I realized, listen, because I had people, they could not even look me in the eye. They were, they walk into the class and just, I could tell they were terrified. And so I'd speak to that too. Like, you might feel like you're out of your element, you don't belong here, you know. I realized with the tools that I had learned off, that I could help people with the breath, with the movement and the tapping to release the stuff without having to talk about it. And I think that talk therapy and psychotherapy is amazing and that it's really beneficial to express things. I also know that there's times where trauma is so deep and we can be disconnected from it to the point, you don't even remember what happened. So you don't understand why you have a drug problem. And so, um, if you ask someone, oh, what's bothering you, they don't actually know, but the body does, and the body will show you. And so I could see that when people walked into the class, that you would ask them, how are you doing? They're like, yeah, I'm good. I've got a great life. Everything's good. We can say whatever we want, right? But the body will tell the truth. And so, by doing the tapping and the movement, I was able to help people move some of the stuff without having to verbalize what it was.
I think that's such an interesting point, talking about how sometimes people don't even remember what has happened or are not ready to access it. Like, I think sometimes we put things in a box far away, and
100%.
then, maybe it's never touched, maybe it's touched 15 years later.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's all these repercussions in your life and you don't even know where they're showing up from. So whether it's like life cycles, life decisions, physical manifestations, can you talk a little bit, because I think, I think it's a lot more common than we even realize. And I think it's so stigmatized that people don't really talk about it. Like there's, for some reason, there's like almost an embarrassment about it, especially if they haven't dealt with it yet. Or maybe, like you said, they're just not ready to talk about it because that would be admitting it, or bringing it to the surface, and then they would have to deal with it. So when people are facing past trauma, can you
Mhm.
describe what that looks like in your life? Just so maybe there's someone listening who is dealing with past trauma and they just don't even realize it. They don't know why these cycles are happening.
Yeah, 100%. And I think also something that I heard recently is that a lot of people are misdiagnosed as having mental illness or bipolar when actually they have PTSD. They have post-traumatic stress disorder, and something happened and it just got locked into their body, and it's like frozen in time, or the body doesn't know the difference between something that happened yesterday or something that happened 25 years ago, which is why you could smell something and you're like instantly, back in your grandma's kitchen, or, um, you hear something, that song, and you're like, oh, you're right back there. There's no time. Whereas the mind, and this is our challenge right now, is that the mind manipulates. It helps us because the mind says, that was the past. That relationship was 2 years ago. Get over it. Move on, right? Or, oh yeah, you've had these bad things happen when you were a child, but that was 20 years ago. It doesn't matter now. But the body's still locked in it. So unless that's released, you get into a new relationship or something similar to that event happens and you get re-triggered. And when you're re-triggered and you're like, oh, I don't know what this is and I don't like it, then it makes sense to me why you would go have a glass of wine or decide to go get high. Like, why wouldn't you? You know, I understand why people become addicts. It's like whatever they're feeling inside, if it doesn't feel good, they want to change that state, of course. And
And
so, sorry.
sorry, I was going to just interject there because that was exactly my experience with when I first approached Ocean. I was like, here are all the things that I think are wrong with me, or I think that I need to deal with, or that I haven't addressed. None of those things came up during our process, and we laughed about it afterwards. I was like, well, that was not, I hadn't even remembered that had happened. Everyone has a different experience with how they release. But Raquel, going back to what you were asking, some people don't know what their trauma is.
Mm.
And I think that's the thing that Ocean really highlighted for me, was that sometimes I have thought my way into what my problem is. And then I've tried to fix the problem that my mind has told me exists. And so when a lot of people that I now see, they're like, I'm not happy with this, I'm not happy with that, I've now started questioning my mind and their mind, because they've justified that they have an ailment, they have a sore shoulder, and that it's because of something they did, rather than an emotion that they haven't processed, that they couldn't possibly potentially know. And that's what I think is so magic about Ocean, is that a lot of the time, even though you will complete a form and say, what are your triggers, it's always helpful to kind of know what's going on in your mind, and for Ocean to know what's going on in your life. But often what will come up has nothing to do with what you thought it was to do with. You might just know that you're feeling pain, but you have no idea where that's coming from. And I can 100% personally attest to how big that shift was for me in each of the 3 times that we met.
And do you think that most people, or I guess you don't have to say you think it, but do most people come to you when they do have physical manifestations, or do you have a lot of people who come to you who also maybe they don't realize it's as physical? Because I think also sometimes that normalizes, like you have consistent pains or aches or whatever, and it's just so normal they don't think about it, but maybe they're coming for more emotional support.
Yeah, I've had everything, because I was working in hotels, in Maldives and in Thailand. I was working in these resorts as a guest offering this treatment, people would come and just be like, oh, I just heard about your thing. You know, there's no physical issue, just, oh, I want to try this out. And it was great with people like creative people or CEOs. I had people that were singers, performers, and they're like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just completely shut down. I have a writer's block. I've had no creative energy coming through me. Or like with CEOs, they had all this stuff going on in their mind with projects, and it's like the pieces weren't fitting together. And through the session, because we're opening up the channels, like literally moving things around inside the body, something clicks. And that, like, it's the funniest thing. Like, they'll start talking in the middle and be like, oh my God, I got it. I'm so excited. I know what I need to do now. I think you had this experience as well, right?
About bombshells. It was about the podcast. Yeah, I haven't even told Raquel yet. I'm waiting.
Yeah. So yeah, it's beautiful. It can be on any level, right? Mental, emotional, energetic, spiritual. You know, it can be a deeply profound release, and then something opens, and you know, people visualize things. Or, you know, I've worked on people, yeah, and that, you know, and unfortunately fortunate, our intimacy, sexuality, and that second chakra is also connected to creativity. And so if there's problems in your intimate relationship, or there's been sexual abuse, there's trauma in that way, it can really affect your ability to create, right? And if you're not creating and connected to that source, then you can feel tapped out and like, what's my purpose of even being here? So yeah, to answer that, it can be anything. And I've had people come out and right after they're like, I'm so clear, I want to have another child. I'm like, okay. Okay. Yeah.
And you said you had one person who just stopped smoking, just was like,
yeah.
oh, I don't smoke anymore.
Yeah.
And it's so different.
Yeah. And I don't promote that. I'm not here to help people quit smoking, but just to hold space. Really what I'm doing is offering a safe space for people to really go deep inside themselves. And I'm also an anchor while they go through that process to find like, ew, I don't like this feeling in here. I don't want this anymore. Let's get rid of that. And once that yuckiness or the heaviness that they've been dragging around is gone, there's room for something else to come in. It's like, yeah.
Well, Ocean, I wanted to jump in there because you do three in a row, and that's really important because the first one is breathwork based. The second one is typically Chine Tsang, which I'd like you to explain because that's the emotional, the stomach being an emotional gut, energy source and emotional source and center. And then the third is like a bit of a combination, and you're very responsive about this process of three. So you can do one as a one-off thing, but I wanted you to just talk for a second about those three and how that works for us.
Yeah, so definitely the first one is often the most intense emotionally because we're literally shaking the body, moving it around and bringing stuff to the surface, whatever's been blocked.
I was howling. I was literally screaming and crying like floods of tears. I kid you not. It was like hilarious and awful and the best thing ever.
Yeah.
Best cry.
So, in the beginning, I would do one session with people and be like, just, this is what it is. And I do a little of everything. And then I realized it's such an intimate process that when we start to unpack that stuff, you need to then re-anchor. Right? It's like if I came over to your house and said, okay, I'm going to open up all of your cupboards and like pull everything out so we can organize it. And then I just dump it on the floor and be like, yeah, you can see what you got. See you later. No, right? You're like, oh, so we want to like bring all this stuff up, right? Get it out, but then organize it, repack it, recycle. And so the first
reduce,
session,
reuse, recycle.
I like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the first session is really emotional. I do all the elements of breath work, meditation, tapping, and then the second session is to go even deeper into the body, into the organs, to go into the places where we're holding the fear, the guilt, the shame, the worry, the anxiety, because every time we feel overwhelmed or life experience trauma happens, we contract. And so we're locking that emotion or that experience. And so what I'm doing is literally relaxing the body so that we can just go, okay, let it go, soften. And then I've got tools. Like tools. um, like I'm fascinated by, any modality that helps the body to feel better. So I'm always studying too, like acupuncture and
that's the gua sha. You've got one is the gua sha.
actually, so this is called toxin, which means hit line.
Oh,
so you're literally hitting the meridian lines. And then this could be used as gua sha, where you're scraping the skin. Yeah. So
and
And
that
what does
that's a
skin
movement of
scraping one do?
yeah.
Same thing. So that brings, if you have toxins in your body from antibiotics, from drugs, alcohol, pollution, whatever, we're digesting it, it's trapped in the body. So also this gua sha is like cupping. It brings the toxins to the surface of the body. So
Yeah,
you
it's kind of
scrape on the
weird.
skin.
Like if you think about it, we wear clothes all the time and our skin is like really hardly ever touched. Like I was thinking that this morning. Like really, like I'm just thinking about those different methods that you're talking about. There's like scraping and this and that, and hands get touched. But if you think like your legs on in general, maybe if you live in a hot climate, but if not, like a lot of us are very,
Deprived. Yeah.
yeah.
And that answers the question too about like why was I so drawn to Asia? And the reason why I wanted to stay there for so long is that one, their custom is you take off your shoes, you have bare feet 80% of the time. You don't go into a store or into someone's home with your shoes on. It's such a beautiful ritual of like, I take my shoes off, I'm connected to the earth. And in these Asian countries, I mean, the way I saw it, there was as many massage and relaxation places as there are coffee shops here. Like here in North America, it's like get more wound up, do more. Whereas there, it's like, it, you can go get a massage for $10 over there, right? So whereas here, it's a lot cheaper to go buy a bottle of wine than it is to go get a massage. That's the reality. So we go for what's easy, and I feel like there's definitely a deeper connection to the body and healing, and yeah, touch is so important. People need to be touched.
Yeah, and I think that's we're gonna see some difficult things after the pandemic with so many people being alone so much as well. So they'll need to call you. um, get some help. We're all just gonna need you to come by. I also wanted to ask, so let's say someone has recognized that they have trauma. What would the first couple steps be? What would you recommend? So they've recognized, okay, I think something's up. I believe I've had this past trauma. They've recognized that it's affecting their life in some way, shape, or form, and they wanna make a shift. What would your recommendation be?
Well, do you mean just in general, if they're going to go out and do something, or working with me?
Um, it can be either. Yeah.
Well, I think, we were just kind of talking about that. Christina was saying how, like, I have people fill out a form and write down what they think the issue is. And a lot of times people are really fixated on that. Like, I do ask the questions, like, who do you resent? And how would your life have been better if something didn't happen? And that's where we get caught up. And it's about realizing it actually doesn't matter what happened. The details of the story right now are irrelevant. What you feel about it is what's important, and how you're showing up in the present, what you're not allowing yourself to do because of this feeling. And often, I tell people right away, do not justify what happened. If your parents were alcoholics and they beat you, don't tell me that, oh, well, they did the best that they could. And, like everyone goes through stuff. That's justifying. What do you feel? Do you feel hurt? Do you feel abandoned? Is that what you're feeling right now in your body? Then that's what needs to be addressed. That's where you start. I feel. And, I think we hold shame around that too, because of this timeline thing. We're like, oh, well, I should be over that. Like, I'm an adult now, but you're living in and with whatever you're carrying. So, if you've had things that made you feel angry, dirty, uh, unworthy, then you're living with that. So that's my question to people. It's like, okay, in that human skin suit, in that meat bag, what are you carrying around? What are you carrying around in that meat bag, right? And it's like, yeah, I'm carrying some resentment. And so that's just the place to start, is that you don't have to justify it. It's like, let's just be real about what we feel.
And
You
I
can't do it
experienced
wrong.
that. Yeah, I experienced that so fully when I came in to see Ocean, because I'm such a strong-minded person. And I think she recognized that immediately. Was like, she sat there and listened to me being like, it's this and it's this and it's this. She's like, okay, great. And she like told me what was going to happen. And I was like, yeah, but I know that it's this and it's this. And she's like, okay, great. And then we start working. And all of a sudden, you're right, Ocean, like, what I was feeling was brought to the surface without justification in my body and then released. And I think then I was left with that feeling. What was it? The first one was like a feeling of relief for me anyway. Everyone has a different process, by the way. Like every single person is totally different with how they go through this. The first for me was just a huge purge. The second was extraordinary euphoria, because I had I kind of felt so happy. I remember wanting to jump out of the bed and being like, I'm so excited to like live and to do things, but I hadn't realized that I wasn't. And no one around me would ever have said that I'm not a passionate person. Like, you would never say that about me as a human being, but I felt a renewed sense of wanting to do things and getting excited about things at a whole other level that I didn't know was missing. And then the third time was like a conversation between me and Ocean for half of the time, because she'd be like, oh, there's this. And I'd be like, oh, this is happening. Oh, this is happening. And we started actually talking back and forth. And Ocean goes in and finds these energy sources and flows and blockages. And then as she releases them and addresses them, things come up that don't have reasons. They just have routes to leave, like as in routes. What do you call it? Yeah, they just have paths to go away, right? Like she'll open the cupboard and then be like, there's the door for this old tin of beans that we don't need anymore.
I thank you. I think too, like you know what, like it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be really upset. And we again, it comes back to being socialized into not dealing with things, or, not knowing how to unpack it. And it's like, it's this age of like, okay, like be positive and, everything's done and good. Yeah, I'm good and grateful. And this is where the tapping's really powerful, because it's like, you need balance. You're allowed to feel angry, and to tell yourself you're not angry when you are is a disservice, and it's still sitting in there. So it's okay to be angry, but it's what we do with it, right? We need to channel the energy and not block it. And people need to know that, yeah, you're allowed to be upset, and you don't need to be over it. You'll get over it when you get over it. Allow yourself to feel what you feel. If you want to be sad today, be really sad, until you're not, right? Like, allow there to be space, and you just haven't been given that freedom. And so people don't know what to do with the energy. And I think that's when it then comes back again to abuse of things. It's like, oh, I need to take a pill to dumb myself down, or to, numb out. Yeah.
Well, we don't have a ton.
I know.
We could talk for hours. Raquel, did you have anything that was bubbling up to the surface? Because I do want to just mention about the products and the sensory experience that Ocean kind of gives us. We're gonna have Ocean back to talk about some more things, because there's so much to unpack here. and to celebrate a product line that is going to be coming out in the future. So we're going to keep our eye on that, because Ocean has a lot of sensory aids that when her products come out, they'll be really, really helpful for so many people around the world. And I'm really, really excited for that. But Raquel, did you have anything else that was pressing?
No,
all the questions.
no, I have a billion things. So I'm going to stop here, because otherwise I'm not going to let it stop. So,
so Ocean, I want to say thank you, because really, I mean, personally, I've said thank you. I've woken up and literally looked at you in your eyeballs and said, "You're magic," and I don't understand. The way that you transform people's lives is unparalleled. And I've done a lot of alternative therapies and Western, traditional therapies and combinations. I've spoken before about my psoriasis, about my various ailments, about living on antibiotics. And I couldn't more highly recommend that someone investigate whether or not Ocean is a good fit for them at this time. Obviously, everyone's in a different place and a different space in their lives. But I would highly recommend just looking into questioning whether or not your mind has taken over everything, whether or not your ailments are, potentially more than what you thought they were, or, start looking into yourself as a whole rather than just a meat bag.
You are so much more than just a meat bag and a skin suit. I think that should be the caption for today's talk.
I think so.
You are so much more than a meat bag in a skin suit. We believe in you. But Ocean, thank you for being so generous, for being so constantly curious, and for healing so many people around the world. And we can't wait to have you come back.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. It's been incredible.
Thanks for listening, Bombshells. In order to continue to elevate, subscribe and don't forget to click that little bell so you can get notified every time we have a new badass brunch. Until next time, stay focused, fierce, and fabulous.